Hey folks, David Stewart here. We're going to take this very basic book cover, which I showed in the last video, and we're going to basically crank it up a little bit, and we're going to do a couple of things that will take this basic book cover, which I think is good enough to sell a book. It's good enough to look okay, and we're going to take it to another level and hopefully make it look really good and make it look like it really belongs alongside of a lot of other fantasy book covers. And we're not going to do a whole lot to this image in order to do that. We're just going to do a couple of things which require a little bit more technical know-how with Photoshop, and they're just extra things that I think you'll find, just kind of like in the last video, a lot of subtle small details will actually make your design pop a lot more. So the first thing that I'm going to do from this basic design I did is I'm actually going to change a couple of arrangements here. I didn't really like, when I was done with this image, the way the sword looked with the words. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change the angle of the sword again, and instead of making it go to the left, I'm going to make it go to the right this time, like this. And the reason I want to go to the right is I think I can fit in the word winter here with a little bit more subtlety, and we also are going to possibly emphasize the sparks a bit more than they were. So I want to make sure I'm not getting too far off the bottom of the page here with this design. Otherwise you'll see the sparks just kind of end, and we don't really want that. So we do want this to go off the edge a little bit, and I just kind of want it to go more at an angle. So I think this angle will work fine. This won't make it wrap around as good for the same reason. You're going to see the sparks not end. But I think this will make it just a little bit better with the word winter. I think I'm liking it to the right rather than to the left this time. But we mainly still want that object in the center. This is creating a sense of asymmetry, and we have some asymmetry in the words. So of course we can kind of pump that asymmetry up a little bit, and put the F kind of lined up right on top of the W here. Have the of really kind of packed in there. So we have the words now have a little bit different design feel to them, and I actually like this a little bit better than before. There's just a little bit extra something to it because of the asymmetric elements. I think I might turn it just a little bit like this. Now this does create some negative space right here, and negative space is something that you generally want to avoid when you're designing. I hate to give general thoughts like, generally you want to avoid negative space, but you kind of do want to generally avoid negative space. But this would be a good place to put, say, a tagline or something like this, which would be, I don't want to edit that. I'm going to say, book 1, right, of the Sword Chronicles. That's huge, but we're going to shrink it down, and we're going to take off some of those effects here. So a great way to get rid of some of that negative space that we don't want. And we're actually going to change the style of this so that it's just white. And the easiest way to do that, because we made this in the title group, we're just going to take it and drag it out of the title group in the layer selector. So there we go. Just like that. Boom. Now it's just white. And you actually, because this is black, you don't need to do anything else with that, but you could just put that right there. And I'm actually going to do one little... There we go. Perfect. A little bit more compact there. So that fills in some of the negative space. Negative space is just areas of black or areas of one color or areas that don't have a lot of visual interest. And it's something that generally it's a good idea to avoid. You could put this book 1 up here, by the way, in this area if you wanted to. But I think for this design, it works good down here in this area of negative space. I'm going to leave a little more room at the top, I think, for this one. Simply because eventually we're going to be putting some stuff on the edges. So I'm going to pull some of this stuff away from the edges just a little bit so that we can get a little bit deeper here. This F down here. Forge of Winter. Okay, so I like this revision of the design. I think this works good with the asymmetry that's involved. So that's the first thing that I wanted to do from the previous video, is just refine the design elements a little bit. Now, what we want to do is it's not terrible to have a black book cover like this, but we might want some color. So what our goal here is to make it more like my book Crown of Sight here, which has a very dark single color with some subtlety around it. And I'm going to show you there's only really a couple things we need to do to make that happen. First thing we actually need to do is we actually need to, now that we have the sword positioned in the way we want, we need to actually cut it out, because that's going to allow us to do a lot more effects than we would normally do with, say, screen blending or blending with blacks and whites. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all these other text elements. We're going to look at just the sword, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the sword so we can see what's going on here. And we're going to take our selector tool, and we're just going to select the sword layer first, guys. Then we're just going to select the sword, and hopefully get that in there. And now from here, it's selected a bunch of black areas. So we can go through there and just kind of refine this selection a little bit. First thing I like to do is add the parts that it missed. It's always better to have a little bit too much extra versus not as much of the image selected as you want. And you'll see why, because of how we're going to remove this from its background. You can, by the way, if you want to do a really fast version of removing something from a background, Microsoft Word actually will do it for you very quickly. But we want to do all this in Photoshop for the purposes of this design tutorial. And that means we want to get all the other little pieces of the sword actually selected here. And if there's a little bit of extra, it's not that big a deal. We will get rid of it when we so we hit the -1, and then we can just kind of get rid of this. Yep. And there we have a good selection. All right, looks like a pretty good selection of our sword here. Not too much extra stuff we ended up having here. Now, there's two ways that we can actually remove this from the background. One way is to just cut and paste, which totally works. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask. So if you go down here to the bottom, it looks kind of like the Japanese flag. You just click that and it makes a layer mask of it. And so that's removed all the other parts of the image so that the other parts of the image are pretty much invisible. But the thing is, we want those fire and forge elements. So all we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the layer. Layer, duplicate layer. And we're just going to remove the mask from the bottom one. And so what you should, so what you should see is delete layer mask. There we go. Okay. So what you should see is our sword and see the sparks nice and clearly. So everything's nice and clear here. Now we have this layer that we should be able to do lots of different kinds of adjustment. So one of the first things that we can actually do is we could actually create, say, an inner glow that will further highlight the divisions of this. And we can make this bigger or smaller as you want. And you can even change the color. So if we want the color to be a little bit more gold, or even like red, we can do that. And so this will create a nice little kind of inner glow for this. We could even make the inner glow have something like color burn or actually color dodge. Looks even cooler. It's nice and bright like that. You can do something like that, and it works pretty well. For this one, I think we're just going to do normal, and that's going to provide some of the things we want. And we can always do some extra effects with some inner shadows and outer shadows. Inner glows, outer glows. We could do, a drop shadow that's actually a glow. You can do an outer glow like this that will make the object pop out from the background a little bit more. But I'm going to show you some other interesting things that we're going to do here. Okay, so that's the main thing that we got to do to be able to accomplish this. From here, the bottom layer, I'm actually going to make this a screen. And for this, I'm going to make this normal. Okay, and you're going to see why in a second here, because if I turn this background layer back on, from the previous video. You notice that the object actually stands out from the background quite a bit. I'm actually going to remove the gradient overlay. Let's actually turn it on so we can see it. That's a good idea, don't you think? All right, well, I'm actually going to remove the gradient, and we're just going to have a color. And so the color can be whatever color you want. So whatever color you want to emphasize in your book cover is going to be good. So for this one, since we have yellow text, that golden text, blue is a great color that goes with it. So I like this color blue, and we're just going to have it be quite bright for this one. And I'm actually going to change the fill to gray. I think the gray is going to automatically kind of change things a little bit. And we can turn down the opacity from here to be a nice dark blue, as you can see. Okay. Now from here, let's turn our text effects back on. And now we have a much more classic looking fantasy cover with blue instead of black. It just looks that much better. But we're going to take it to another level again. So I'm going to select my group here and look at this, and I'm going to create a couple of interesting effects that are going to make this text look even better than it looks right now. And one of those things I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to go to New Layer. You can do Shift Control New, and from here we're going to we're going to fill it with black, and we're going to change it to a screen for now. Now we're going to give you a couple options of what we're going to do here. We're going to go to Filter, we're going to go to Render, and we're going to create a lens flare. So select lens flare from the Filter menu, and you just want to roughly put it where you want the lens flare to be. And we're going to put the lens flare on, say, like the F, so it's going to be up here somewhere. And you can do a couple of different versions. I think either the 105 prime, or you don't want to do movie prime because it puts these extra things here, like you're watching a J.J. Abrams movie or something. This one will work, and we can turn the brightness down just a little bit, like that. And then now you have a lens flare. I mean, that looks kind of cool. But this is going to look even better if you change this from screen. Now, right away, you could actually just turn the opacity down a little bit and get the effect that you want without kind of overdoing it. Now, there is one little warning here. You might see the edge of the image if you do it this way. So maybe we get rid of the lens flare and we do it again, and we just do it in a way that'll do it a little bit lower. There we go. Okay, and then we can just adjust it and we're not going to see it. So you can do it from there, turn down the opacity a little bit so that it's just kind of like that. But we can even make it look even more interesting by going to color dodge for the blending mode. And what you'll see with color dodge is that this just lightens what's underneath it by quite a bit. And so from here we can just turn down the opacity and get some really interesting effects. So if you're doing a regular lens flare, I actually would recommend that bright white lens flare. It looks a little bit better. But if you're going to do this color dodge thing, which I'm going to do for this effect, I actually recommend that you do it with this first one, this 50 to 300 zoom. Is going to look really good, or the 35mm prime. Both are going to look pretty good. And have the brightness down a little bit. About 67 is probably good. And we hit OK. And from here we can just place it right where we want, and go over here to color dodge. And what this does is it just creates like a little shine as if it's made of gold. And we can create a couple of these just by copy pasting the layers and just moving them around to wherever we want. Wherever you think would be cool to create a little highlight here, you can do that. And maybe we want one like on the tail of the R, like that. And each one of these, as you go through it, I like them wherever there's like a curve or something really strong. Wherever you see in this gradient that we've created something that's like a nice, so like the O I think looks good, or the G, kind of like you could put it maybe like on this part of the N. Now this looks a little weird right now. We're going to soften all this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these layers and I'm going to just put them in a group. So you could turn down the overall opacity of the entire thing, as you can see, like that, to create different effects. Or you can go through each one. So maybe for the first one, which is layer 9, we want that one to be, you know, maybe 80%. This one, maybe we want it to be, like, say, 58%. Do each one to a different amount, you know. And you've gone it pretty low because then it just looks like a shine on there. That one's going to need to be pretty low because it's on a tail of an R. And this one's on the N. There we go. Actually, probably pretty low for that one. And we can actually add a couple more in. So let's put one maybe on this part of the O. Or maybe on this O. And we'll just down really low. Maybe about this. And you can actually, check this out, you can also just shrink the size of it down like that. If you want to put it on a little letter or somewhere like that. I'm going to shrink it down. And then it's going to look like that. Okay, so now we have some little sparkles on our letters to make them really pop out and look nice and bright. And you can do as many of these as you want. Probably less. I don't know if less is more, but probably is. And if you do more, so you know, let's do one more. You want them to be just really subtle. You don't want too many that are like really bright. So this one we just turn it like down to like pretty low here. So it's just really, just doesn't get noticed that much. And you can get that there. Okay. So, and the hard thing too is that in order to get through a lot of the layers, you know, you have to turn them off to see where each one is. See, I like the way the one looks on G. Not as much on R, so I might select that one and maybe just put it kind of on a different, there we go. I think I like it better there. And I like that one where it is. I'm not sure I like that one where it is, so maybe we put that one maybe up there. And turn that one off. And maybe this one we like it better like down here. Okay, turn those back on. And then from here you can just crank the whole effect up or down. There you go. Look at how that really pops out now. Now let's take a look at our central object again, and let's do a little bit of the same thing with this. So this is, let's rename this. That's going to be our shiny bits. Group 1, group 2. Let's make another layer here. A new layer. And we're going to call this shiny 2, just to keep better track of it. I should be naming this stuff better as I go, but I tend to just go through this workflow. So if you like to name things better, then you do that. I'm going to fill with black. And we're going to make it a screen for right now so we can see what we're doing. Okay. So I'm going to hide those shiny bits, and I'm going to make some shiny bits that are just for our sword. So I'm going to move this down here. Okay. So just for the sword. Now it's kind of like, yeah, do we need stuff on the sword? Yeah, you'll see. Let's go ahead and turn all our text off. Get down, and we're going to do one for the sword. So filter, render, lens flare. Put it further down. Okay. And I'm going to turn the brightness up just a little bit. Again, I like this. We can do maybe just a 35mm prime, which has a little bit different. Oh, this one has, yeah, let's get rid of that. You could do one that's like that, but let's do this one because it's not going to have as much of this extra stuff. And we're going to put it, we could put it right down there. So you could do a regular one like that if you want. See how it kind of just pops that open. And we can paste it, and make this one say color dodge. And so for the color dodge one, you can see it just really, you can create some just fantastic little hot spots here. Like maybe we want a hot spot right there. Same idea. We're going to turn the opacity down a little bit. Actually, I think I'd like it a little higher for this one. And I put it there. You can make an even brighter hot spot wherever you want. And just put one, we can put one up here and just make that one quite a bit less. Just add some brightness and some shading onto this to make it nice and bright. And we'll add one more, maybe up on the hilt. Okay, and there we go. This starts to look pretty good. We've added some lens flares. We've added some other fun things like that. Maybe we'll do just one more. And we're going to take that one and maybe just overlay it with this and just turn down the opacity a little bit. So it just adds an extra bright hot spot there to what we were doing. Okay, and now we have this. We have this object. It looks really, really good. And the background's popping a little bit more. And you can see that these lens flares are going to actually add a little bit of depth to our blue background. You notice the blue background now doesn't have a single color to it. It actually has several colors to it. We can then select our shiny bits for this, select those, and put those in a group. Now I'm going to do one more. I'm going to put some underneath this. I'm going to lock this layer down so to make sure that I don't move it. This is our image underneath. Okay, so we're going to add some to that one. And we're going to fill it with black, and we're going to put it on screen for now so we can see what we're doing. And then we're going to render a lens flare. And I'm actually going to make this one like a nice bright one. I'm going to put it like right there, which is nice and bright. And I can just put it right here. Let's actually do that again. Let's crank it up to about 120. Look how bright that is. Now you see how that's going to create an effect on our blue background. We can just use that as our effect. Unfortunately, we can't see the whole image when we're creating a lens flare. It's kind of a pain. And then we can either we could turn on the opacity of this, or we can even go to, say, do another color dodge layer. And you can see it does quite a different effect when we have the color dodge on it. So for now, let's do normal, and I'll actually screen. We'll duplicate it, and the bottom one will do color dodge, and we'll slide the color dodge. No, let's leave it where it is, and we'll just turn down the opacity and turn down the opacity. We get a nice halo effect on both of these. And then when we put the sword back on and all of this other shiny bits, now we have quite a bit more going on with this object. And again, if you don't, you can always redo these lens flares as much as you want. So you can turn them down or up, get as much kind of background effect as you want. If you want to turn this one down, you can. However you want to do it. So maybe turn this one back up a little bit. You can get some neat effects this way. The main thing when you're doing this behind there, because this alters the whole effect of this blue, you got to be kind of careful. Now from here, again, we can turn our opacity up or down to lighten or darken it. I'm going to darken it quite a bit here. Just make it a really dark, deep blue. Now let's take a look at everything with our text effects back on, and we can see that we have a much better book cover that has a lot more going on to it. I think this hotspot right here is probably a little bit too much. So I think that's that one. Nope. There it is. So for this one, I'm going to turn it down a bit. And I'm going to adjust where it is, I think. Let's turn that one off. There we go. Just where that one is. It's kind of overlapping it, see? Nice and bright. Now if we want to bring up the sparks, I'll show you a couple ways that we could bring up the sparks. So if we go down to this bottom layer and we want to make those sparks even brighter, what we can do is we can just do a little bit of an adjustment layer here, do levels, and just we can really bring our just kind of mess with these levels here. This is going to do this. Let's make it only, press this and it'll only work on this layer here with the sword. And so we can really kind of bring that up, kind of make more smoke. So even just adding a little bit more dimension here, bringing up kind of the smoky parts of the picture to get this effect going. Okay. I might actually add just another levels layer here anyway. We can do lots of different effects to kind of pop this stuff up. Maybe, you know, this is just kind of, there we go. Yeah, see, I like that. All right. Let's turn it all back on. There's our more advanced book cover. I think I am going to bring this down a little bit into that negative space there. And so notice we lose a lot of the feeling that we have a bunch of negative space with our object. This object's bright, it stands out. If this is too much lens flare for you, you could always, you know, just turn it down a bit. But I think this actually looks a lot better. This is a lot closer to a book cover that I would actually use, much closer to something like this, which is nice and bright and has some really, you know, a lot of pop to it. Last thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to bring in the, we're going to darken the corners of this to enhance the effect even further. So I'm going to go in front of the text here, which is going to be right here. So I'm going to take this layer, which I already made. Let's make a new layer. New layer. And again, we're going to fill it with black. We're going to make it a screen. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make it a little bit of a vignette. So we're going to bring in an inner shadow. So inner shadow, notice we're darkening the edges here. Hopefully you can see this. Let me get a little bit closer here. And you can see this really good. Inner shadow. We can do a couple different kinds of inner shadows. So this one here is a color burn, and we can actually change that color to some more blue. This is a little bit more subtle effect. Turn it down a little bit. And we can do this inner shadow, which will be a rather broad and dark one, as you can see. And this just darkens the edges and makes it pop that much more. So there you go. There is your central object design, nice and bright and beautiful, with lots of shiny bits. And of course, if you can spend as much time as you want messing with this, but you could turn, since everything's grouped together, you can turn the shiny bits up or down depending on how bright or pronounced you want those elements to be. I will give one tip when we are making our PDF cover for our paperback. If you are wanting these lens flares to look proper, you need to flatten the image before you make a PDF. For whatever reason, Photoshop, when it makes PDFs, it does not flatten lens flares properly. I don't know why that is, but it just doesn't really do it when you're actually making a PDF. So it's a lot better to flatten it before you make a PDF. Now, if we want the sword, I might do a couple more effects with this medieval sword. Let me just show you a couple that I think work pretty good. I'm going to unlock this layer so I can actually mess with it. Let's say we want a drop shadow. You can see a drop shadow is going to create some interesting effects here. You can do a color burn drop shadow and just turn down the opacity like that, and it can really make that pop a little bit. You can also do a colored drop shadow, which is going to look like a glow. You could also do an outer glow like this. That's going to make it, you know, kind of stand out a little bit more. And if you do that, it's always, you know, you could do a color dodge and it'll have this really glowy effect. You just turn that down and keep it nice and subtle. And yeah, I like it like that. So there it is. I think this one looks good. I would totally publish a book with this cover. I don't know if I will publish a book with this cover. If this cover is like exactly what you need for a book, send me an email at dvspress.com or stu@dvspress.com and let me know, and maybe I can either sell you this book cover, or I don't know, if you've been following along with the publishing course, maybe you can just have this book cover. We'll see. But anyway, let me know what you think, and leave me your comments down below. Hopefully this has been useful and helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Oh, last little bit. In order to use this, I forgot, we're going to export the image as a JPEG, and we can just use it there. Let's go over here. Covers art, Forge of Winter 3, and then we can really just compare the two that we've done. Let's look at the first one, wherever it is. I have so many files, it's hard to keep track of all of them. So here's the original one we did, super basic. Looks like this. And here's us with the more advanced design. There's nothing wrong with the simple design. It's going to look fine. But if we go with the more advanced design, you get something that's really going to look great on the Kindle platform. So anyway, I'll see you guys next time. See you at the Right Stream every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a good one.